the top one was hitting from behind and the next one was fighting. So the hitting from behind is weird because
last few games there's been a few.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
and honestly, man, they scare the shit out of me. Like every time when I see guys going in hard and a guy coming in, I honestly in a game, and I'm not even talking about my own kids that I know or my own kid. It's every kid. When I see a guy going in hard and I see a guy coming behind him, and I'm not sure if that kid's gonna let up.
Yeah.
As I watch the game, my ass puckers up.
Yeah.
I swear to God.
For sure, man.
Because it's like so dangerous. And like Kadri got hit. Who hit him the other day? Or Kane did one the other night too, right?
Kadri.
Kane hit Kadri.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a devastating, crazy one, but it was hard enough. And it's just a shit play. Man. It's just so shit. So you're defenseless.
Well, especially stories like we have had Sean Vanadam on where he's broke his ankle, and you get these tragic things that happen, career enders, Achilles tears, broken tibias, like all this stuff is. Yeah. All this stuff is it's tough to watch, man. So it gets scary, those types of plays.
Yeah, and so I say this like with the warning on like for the players and parents, if you talk to your kids, like teach that aspect of it, that when you're going in there, that you do not give that shove because it's so dangerous. And having said that, sometimes the emotions of the game, you're just playing and you think not too much, but it doesn't take a lot.
Yeah.
So like I hope it's not one of my son's or my son's teammate that does it accidentally, because you're going to feel like absolute garbage because you're going to actually hurt somebody. But it's like it scares me.
Yeah,
it's the one thing that scares me, and it's the one thing that, like, when you see the numbers and you're going in hard, guys, wrap your arms around them at least. Like, do something to cushion that, because it's bad. So that's the one thing that scares me. And then the next side is the fighting doesn't scare me nearly as much. But for the guy that's unprepared to ever get in a fight and get knocked out, it makes me a little bit nervous, but not the end of the world. So the debate is, do we ever get fighting out of hockey? And I don't know if that's the answer, because I think fighting in hockey, like, okay, so the reason I say fighting in hockey is getting rid of it is not the answer, is because where hockey originated, as we talked about in a podcast before. Like, because you'll hear comments. I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a percentage of people that would like fighting totally out of hockey, and some people would like the hitting eliminated and all that kind of stuff, right? And that's when you don't actually understand where the game came from. And I'm not trying to be a old school gorilla here, but the bottom line is, when hockey started, when we went and did that podcast and did a little bit of research, there's a rugby background behind it. Right, rugby on ice, and it's evolved into what it is now. But if you look at rugby, it was a rough game, right? So that's how it evolved, and there was fights and there was hitting all over the place. So it's tempered a bit, but I think that's part of the game. It's just the fabric of the game.
Yeah.
So and I actually like fighting in it at the appropriate time.
Right. Well,
I think it's important.
I was gonna say a couple things. First, just quick on the hit from behind thing. You said about the guy going in, but also for the guy going in to make the hit, but the guy also that's going in to get hit, you also have to be paying attention to how you're going into the boards too, right? And like you said, it's hard in the heat of the game. You forget that somebody's coming hot on your tail, but you have to learn and be taught how to brace yourself in those situations a little bit better. You don't want to be loose going into that situation, because it just takes that one little jab to the lower back. It's like you're going down and you don't know how you're going to hit, right?
No.
So that's freaky. But then the fighting thing, to me, it's more than just like where the game came from. It's what makes the game interesting. So I think people, when they talk about taking the physicality out, I don't think they realize what that does to the game and what it does to the reason you like to watch. And part of the reason you like to watch, whether you acknowledge it or not, is that there's a threat of violence in the game. And the more that you remove that, the less interesting that game becomes, because a lot of the decisions that guys make is going to be because they could get hit, or because they could have to answer the bell or whatever. And even in junior hockey, how much they've limited the fighting, I'm not a big fan of either. And I'm not saying you don't cap it at a certain level, but it's too low, because part of the game, those guys that have that element of their game, now they're capped and they have to restrict how they would play. So if you want to stop, maybe you can't have 35 fights a year, because then you're fighting every other game or whatever. Like, I get that, but they should be confident enough when the time is right that they can fight without a more severe consequence of suspension or whatever, because it is part of the game. And to me, it's like guys that do UFC, like you know what you're signing up for. Like that's part of what you're signing up for. You're getting hit in the head. You're getting kicked in the head. Is it great that you get kicked in the head? No, but you're signing up for the sport, you know? So that's just my opinion on it. If you're going to play a sport like hockey, a sport like football, rugby, you're going to go into fighting, boxing, whatever, it's part of the agreement when you go into it. If you don't want to get hit, if you don't want to have to get in a fight at some point, that's not the sport. You go play a different sport, you know? And because it just really does affect the game. And for the people
Well, can you imagine watching NFL with flag football?
well,
You wouldn't.
and that's what I mean. You wouldn't
Yeah,
watch it,
you wouldn't.
right? You wouldn't watch it. And the reason
And
it's
there's no guts, glory, blood,
no,
mud, and beer
yeah,
stories to
and
talk
it takes
about.
the competitiveness, and that's
Yeah.
something we see a lot. Like some of the guys that went to the Spits game the other night were saying it was just very, the first two periods very uninteresting. And I found that a lot with a lot of the games that I went to see this year, because I went to quite a few. A lot of the time, it's very, very uninteresting. And something that makes people want to watch is, yeah, there wasn't any goals today, but did you see that hit? Did you see those two guys tee off on each other in the corner after that scrum or whatever? That's what makes it an interesting game to watch and makes you want to watch more. You know that, and that's whether you acknowledge it or not, because people are going to say, well, it could be just as interesting without the hits and without the fighting and whatever. And it's not true. It doesn't matter what you say or what you think is correct. It's just not true. If you take that the threat of violence out of the game, it completely changes the dynamic of the game, and it will be less interesting to you.
I'm
Yeah.
1,000% on that.
Yeah. So
It's just not the game. Like that.
No.
That's like you said. I signed up for it as a 4-year-old, and there was body checking when I played. We didn't have face masks. That's how old I am. But we had to put a face mask on when I was in Adam, I think, and I cried. I don't want to wear this. That's not what hockey players do.
Yeah.
But that was part of it. Is you look forward to it. But and I believe. I do believe that when you grow up with the body contact in it already, that it's not an issue as you grow
I
up.
agree. Yeah.
So, like for example, the kids that play lacrosse, my son Potts on Charlie's team, like the kids that have done Grunder, all these kids that have played lacrosse, the body checking in hockey is natural. They just it's not overused because it's just part of the game, and you get bumped and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But what happens is you get into the Bantam, right? Or when did they put it? Bantam?
I feel like Bantam minor.
So
now.
what these kids do, they start licking their chops. I remember all the kids saying, "Oh, I can't wait to start hitting." And so your first couple games, it's just a slugfest of kids just trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's good. No, I understand the other side where you're not trying to hurt kids and keeping other kids safe, the smaller kids and all that, but I still would rather have hitting in it right from the beginning.
It's what you're signing up for, man.
It's hockey.
Go back to it's hockey.
It's not hockey till it is.
And it's better when they're younger. Again, in my opinion, it's better when they're younger for them to climatize to it when the force isn't as impactful, right? If you get run into by another 7-year-old, it might knock the wind out of you, it might knock you down, but the likelihood that when everyone's learning to skate, the likelihood that something catastrophic happens isn't very high. So you grow up figuring out how to keep your head up and how to handle guys bumping into you and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's a better thing that they wait till later.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it too, you're talking about the face mask thing. And this is not to say, and what I'm not saying you don't do certain things that would obviously prevent some injuries. Like for example, in junior, I don't like the rule necessarily, but I can understand it how everyone has to wear a cage now in junior. I get that.
Junior B,
if you're
right?
not in the OHL. If you're not in the OHL, I kind of get that. You get a stick in the face and lose 8 teeth. Like it's not really necessary. Makes it more difficult to fight, but we can talk about that one. That's one that's okay for me. But so there's common sense things. I'm not saying we want guys to go get hurt. I'm not saying you don't do things or like limiting the blindside hits and the high elbows and the jumping, all that stuff. I understand because we're not trying to make people more hurt than they might be. But there should be a limit to what we're talking about. You know, you're not going to go to a UFC guy and say, okay, all you guys are wearing bubble wrap now for all the fights. So that's not sport now. Now we change the game, you know? So that's my, I don't know, last little 2 cents about the fight stuff too.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.